increase to the capital component, but overall 4.23%, which I can explain. We already reviewed this with the audit and finance committee meeting. That was Tuesday night, and hopefully I can explain it to you because it is very preliminary, and these numbers could change, may change, probably will change. So, taking a look at revenues that we're anticipating for next year, we're always looking at federal aid. That's pretty flat. Typically, our state aid, which is also typically flat, we're looking at, as a district, perhaps a 2% increase in foundation aid. That $140,278 really represents about the amount of 1% on the tax levy. And that's super preliminary because our governor's executive proposal isn't even due until February 8th. Yeah. So with revenues, we're taking a pretty conservative approach to all of it, as I always do. Estimating state aid is tough at this time again. The governor's executive proposal should be ready next month. And fund balance, if we take a look at appropriated fund balance, we don't have an anticipated amount there, but I need to tell you that we try to use an appropriate amount of fund balance each year to fill that gap between revenues and expenditures. And this coming year will be no different. We're going to try to keep that number the same or less. That is our goal, to use a little less of fund balance when we can. I don't know if that's honestly going to be possible in the coming year, and certainly in the next couple of coming years. We have a healthy fund balance, and we may need to tap into that for some expenses that you'll see later in the program. Reserves, not on this slide, but reserves are something we are pretty strategic about here at the district. We need to utilize those funds we have set aside in reserves for specific legal purposes, and fund balances beyond that. So I think we need to look at some of the state aid. I don't know if I have a slide here that follows. Yep, I do. So expense-driven aids there's really typically no excess costs, sorry, you skip down there. There's really no difference in that aid. This is a category that can adjust pretty frequently based on the programs we're placing our students in. So it really varies year to year based on our special education needs and where we are able to place our students. Instructional resources, you see a slight increase. That's really computer hardware, software, library textbooks. That increase reflects the amount we're actually receiving this year, because that again comes with the governor's executive proposal a little bit later. Foundation aid, here's what we anticipate the increase to be. Expense-driven aids, those are expenses that's money we expend through BOCES typically, and money that we spend that comes back to us as aid the following year. You can see that number's down. The net total state aid we anticipate to be right around that $140,000, which I showed you earlier on the slide before. Very conservative. That's where we think we are at the moment. I kind of explained, mostly for Marge and Will, for everybody in the audience that's new, we have explained the expense-driven aids, the foundation aids, the excess costs, by bulleting those items that are found within. And some of those numbers have yet to change. And the administrative portion of the budget is something we covered last year. Here we are again, that anticipated roughly 2% increase in the administrative component. Again, explanations of what is found within the administrative component. And we finally get to capital, which is really the subject of tonight. Again, we covered this with audit and finance the other night. And just for review, this slide I would typically bring to the public in the hearing. explain what exactly is in the capital portion of the budget, and how much is it, and what piece of the pie does it really take. So next slide, is it 15? We are looking at, slide. Am I going too fast for anybody? Good. So far. So you'll see the capital is made up of these yellow subcomponents: operation of plant, maintenance of plant, separate printing, separate data processing, and you can really read the rest. But let me try to explain a couple of things. For operation of plant and maintenance of plants, generally built into there is a 3% increase in salaries. Remember, the amount of minimum wage has increased. We anticipated a 70-cent increase for this year, we got $1. So we're now going to anticipate $1. You know, but we're getting awfully close to the $15 mark, which is the goal of the state.
We're going to get into that at a later time because of the high percent. I know 25%. But I think we're going to get into it at a later time, look at the details, because it's pretty much a 25%.
For maintenance of plant? Yeah. Actually, I'll do a little bit of that tonight. And let's see, most is administrative costs, we'll stick down there. There's a minimal increase there, typically split between the administrative and capital components. Benefits are spread throughout all the components, but for this particular portion of the budget, we're looking at a pretty modest increase in employee benefits. Now, I am going to explain a couple of the higher dollar changes there. The maintenance of plant at $107,162, and debt service at $189,700. So in that maintenance of plant increase, that $107,000, roughly we're budgeting $100,000 in there, which is why you see that large increase at this point, and that can change based on our discussions. For maintenance projects, so building in the budget $100,000 to take care of substantial maintenance projects that we ordinarily wouldn't take care of in this way, or we might put into a capital outlay project, or we might put into a larger capital project. And this is something I've always felt as a superintendent is something that's really essential to a budget, to put in a line item that has a substantial amount of money should we find ourselves in a place where we need to make quick improvements. These would be based on our building condition survey priorities, better suited to the work our staff can do in-house. So if we have a project, I think I mentioned a couple of different things, but if there's something that Mr. Wood and his staff can do in-house, you can do it with that line item of money without going into capital project. Some examples might include pavement, classroom renovations, and Mr. Wood will certainly identify those with, let's say, Alicia Coster. I'm always struggling with that because people like to be called certain things, right? It's Alicia and Dave as well. And we certainly review those with the facilities committee if it ever came up. So what we did was, in the debt service, well, let me say on that. So that's not a clear $107,000 increase in that line. What we've done is take from the program portion of the budget about $82,000. We would normally reserve for food service, which is an area of savings for us in the program portion of the budget. So put it in here, we're really looking at a net increase of about $12,000 for that $100,000. So it's a little confusing right now. Once you see the program portion of the budget, you will see food service. That amount is taken back later. Now this one, I might bring Alicia in now, because she's the expert with debt service. But when we're talking about debt service, looking at almost $190,000 increase, this does have to do with just try to explain it. It's a little complicated, but this represents a decrease in our existing payment schedule for the two former capital projects and front-loading our debt payments for the next or upcoming ones. So we have an EPC project coming and a medium capital project coming. We need to borrow for those projects, and we're kind of front-loading the payment, some of the payments in that amount of money. And we're looking at this in terms of long-range planning. And I'm going to call on Alicia to explain any nuances and ask if anybody has any questions, because this is a big item.
So I think that you explained it really well, first of all. I think in our long-range plan, as we've looked at different scenarios in the past, we always try to rely on our understanding of our building aid flows and when we anticipate receiving them on capital work over the long term. So when we do debt schedules, initially upon borrowing for a project, we take those into consideration. As we do more projects, we update those scenarios for multiple projects, multiple borrowings, multiple aid receipts. So the ideal alignment is to understand the flow of your project and the duration of a capital project, run scenarios to best align your debt to when you expect to receive the aid, which keeps your local share of projects level and stable over the long term. So we knew in facilities and audit finance last year, we did a lot of work on understanding when we started to see a drop in debt from our two former projects, which starts next year. That was just over $100,000. So knowing that we're going into these two new projects and under the agreements for Danforth and Tetra Tech that the board hopefully will approve this evening, allows for Danforth has initial payments upon contract execution. So it was an opportunity to kind of take advantage of a drop in aid, a drop in debt on next year's schedule to increase and front load our debt payments for the two new projects up front, which kept us aligned to our aid, and it kept us stable over the next 15 years in terms of our debt to our aid ratios. So that's the ideal way, is to keep a nice balance between how much you're paying and the aid that you're receiving.
Can you remind the board why that's so important to maintain?
Sure. Debt? So what it does, it maintains stability in our revenue stream, primarily in our tax levy calculation. So as complicated as the tax levy calculation is, there's a capital exclusion factor which gets added to the minimum tax levy limit. And so to not have huge swings up or down that tax levy calculation, you try to find a nice balance, almost the sweet spot in your debt to aid ratio so that you keep a level cap over the long term. So we really do look, I know sometimes with the audit and finance and facilities, we've looked at the next 5 to 10 years, but realistically, internally, we're looking at the next 15 to 18 years to align to where we think capital projects are going to flow in terms of our aid payments. So it's really important for that stability over the long term for our financial plan. And I think, also trust too in our community that there's not the huge swings up and down from one year to the next in terms of the support.
Yeah. If we're not keeping a close eye on it, you all know that we're bound to experience a large tax levy increase potentially if we're not careful. As careful as we can be. And what made me feel pretty good today was that we had a meeting, Alicia and I, with all the district superintendents and all the district administrators for business, and Rick Timms. You all know Rick Timms? Most of you do? Okay, well, he's our finance guru for all the superintendents in the state. And everything that he put up, he said, you must be planning 4 to 5 years down the road. Well, we're planning 10, we're planning 15, as Alicia said. And we felt really good because most of his points we're already doing, and some of them better than we anticipated. Okay, so we are going to share more of that information with you. We can get you for a retreat sometime, a workshop, because there's more in-depth understanding of the long-range plan that we need to talk about. So the capital changes I intend to explain, to Art's point, a little bit more in detail if this amount actually ends up being what we need. So I'll explain that here. There's 2 larger items. And again, for Will and March, if you've not seen this before, I go into some explanation of what's included in the capital portion of the budget under those topics. And finally, tonight, capital outlay projects are part of this component of the budget. We do budget them. And we're considering next year the removal of 1 or or 2 oil tanks. So we're removing 1 oil tank, it's a big project, and we're thinking that we have 2 more, right? To take care of, and this would probably do a nice job, at least for 1. And for those of you who want to take this home and do some reading, fall asleep while you're doing it. This explains a little bit more this next slide on capital outlay expenses, how it works. We budget $100,000 this year, we spend it, in the coming year, we get reimbursed for it the following year. And it's a good use of taxpayer funds to get work done. A little bit more speedy than waiting for a large capital project. And I wanted to share with you what I think is next. So next month we'll come together again and we'll start our work on a program, or we'll share our work with the program component budget. Before that, I think on the 7th of February, we have the Audit Budget Finance Committee meeting, which we'll have a chance to flush this through with that committee. And then we'll bring this to you later on in the month. And I want to stress to the board, I need to be quite serious about this. The continuation of long-range planning as we develop this budget is foremost in our thoughts. But we're not just working with this year, we're working with it several years down the road. And I think we really need to convene that workshop that we tried to do. It's just timing is terrible around holiday discussion, but we should probably look at February or certainly March to do some long-range digging in our financial planning. And I think it goes back to goal 5, where we have this responsibility to the mission and goals moving forward. And we'll get that draft program component discussion to that February Audit Budget Finance Committee meeting. And then we have the Board of Education. I don't know workshop, but I mean meeting. I think I meant meeting. We have a meeting on February 16th. And then we expect the governor's executive proposal so we know more about what state aid we're getting February. That's the extent of my presentation tonight. Any questions? Thank you.
Dr. Cranshaw. So leads us to the next item, which is the presentation of the Knox opening and grade level configuration plan. Take it away, Mr. Gallagher.
In front of you, you have some more paper, and on this paper it gives you a presentation that I've already shared with our ad hoc committee who's working on the Knox reopening and reconfiguration of grade levels. This document I keep changing, so it's an evolving document, so we're living, we add, we take away, and parts of it can be confusing, so let's try to get through this. So this is under what I call district continuous improvement. So we are not doing anything in the way of a project that's controversial, that's whatever, without knowing that it's being done to have some improvement in the district. So this is one of 3 topics that you know. It's an evolving presentation, reminder of our mission, because this is mission central work, and reminder of our goals, and I do this with everybody. And so we have some options, which were presented on January 4th. Is that last week? It was fairly recent. So what happens here is that the board doesn't necessarily have the advantage of hearing the latest and greatest information about any of these ad hoc committees. You're certainly welcome to attend. We put minutes up on the website almost immediately. They don't go into great detail. Anytime you want some more information, please just give me a call. But I would say that the way this works is that we meet with ad hoc, and then we sort of go back to cabinet and we share what we learned there, and then we come up with more evolution on the plan, and then that will find its way in email to ad hoc, or in this case, I think I sent an email to the entire faculty and staff. And then here we are. It's what is it, 9. And we're starting to get closer and closer to what at least I'm comfortable with, but certainly we have discussed in ad hoc and definitely in cabinet. I think we have a consensus on cabinet as well. So we examined the why. Why are we doing this in the first place? I was just asked a question about that today, and I said, space, 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 space. And that is the first and most simple explanation I can give. Within that, we need to do what's best for student learning, to move the district forward, and that is sort of like the Robert Frost poem, two roads diverge to the yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both. You kind of look down both pathways, they both look good, and hopefully in the end we take the path less traveled. I don't know, the poem, the reference, it works for my head. But continuous improvement, there's cabinet planning in this, there's master schedule planning, there's note catcher, pros and cons cabinet gets together, and we do that exercise, ad hoc, and other feedback, professional feedback. I think you may have received at least 4 letters recently from some folks. So here's where we are. This was plan A, this is what we came into the ad hoc believing. So we would put UPK, K and 1 at Pleasant, we put grades 2 to 4 here at Knox, 5 through 7 at Warren Street, 8 and 12 at the junior senior high school. That was the original plan before Jay. We had pros and cons. We actually heard from 2nd and 3rd grade teachers who toured this building, and they reminded me how important it was that transitions waste instructional time. And there was a lot of transition involved for little people. We have to use the bathroom, we have to go to the sink. And I think we're underselling the importance of that, and I think listening to those teachers would be really compelling to say, yeah, you have a point. Because we don't want to lose, 20 to 40 minutes a day. Because second graders, every 2 seconds their hand goes up. Can I go to the bathroom? And you certainly don't necessarily just want them leaving the room in a big school like this. So we got to a different plan. We were asked what the research says about all of this, and I can tell you as a researcher myself, you can get research to back any position you want. You can read any paper, you can listen to Fox News, you can listen to WAMC, you can get the angle you want. The research that I found and feel comfortable talking about is limited. So regarding grade level grouping, there is some research out there, but it's not significant in terms of the best way to go. There certainly are traditional ways to go, but I wouldn't say that's research. Or if it is research, think to yourself, how old is the 6 to 8 model? How old is the K to 8 model? How old is the high school model of 9 through 12? When does that last change in the normal mindset of people? Working for less school transitions are best. So when we have students going from level to level to level, the significance only happened at achievement levels that wasn't high when you had more than 2 transitions. So in other words, going from primary school to elementary school to middle school. After that, they say, research says that it doesn't really matter how many transitions you have. You could have 14, the damage is done when you've had 2 transitions. Third bullet is focused on transitions in grade span. It's not recommended. The research I've read says stop arguing over what the transitions look like, what the grade spans look like. You're going to have both. Focus instead on students' sense of attachment to their school and the quality of teacher in the classroom of the student. Teacher effectiveness and teacher quality is linked to student achievement. That's just, that research is ancient, but I can share with you 20 other citations that say the link between student achievement, or the highest benefit, highest impact to student achievement, is the teacher in the classroom. Second then comes the principal, or the leadership in the building. Structured, focused teacher collaboration is key. We like to talk about collaboration. We like to say that we're collaborating, but are we truly building it into the schedule? Are we truly making it work? And I can honestly say it's harder and harder every year to build collaboration time in the schedule. Because the mandates haven't slowed. We have requirements for instruction in each subject, it's tough to fit everything in. Why don't we start the language program at third grade, where our third graders are learning Spanish? Well, if you can try to wrangle some ELA time, and we already don't have enough writing time, these are the challenges we face. Having teacher collaboration is one of those hard things to schedule. And so we do need to try to. Consistent, coordinated, cohesive curriculum is what I call guaranteed viable curriculum. Everyone on the same page, not literally, but figuratively. Kind of a coordinated, I guess I'm not a coordinated, timeline of developmental skills that a teacher and students. In the middle school concept, it's very important, research says, to have a staff there to understand what it's like to be an adolescent. How students are different at those developmental levels. And then also I found in research that students enter adolescence earlier now than they did 50 years ago. That was in a study from 1972. So 50 years forward, our fifth graders, our seventh graders are more sophisticated, they're more exposed, they're more jaded. There are a lot of things that they weren't 50 or 100 years ago. And that's all part of our challenge. Ad hoc committee feedback, having pros and cons exercises, which I talked about, brought us to a general plan B, where this is sort of harkening back to the studies in 2019 and 2020, where we basically had K2 at Pleasant, 3 through 5 at Orange Street, 6 through 8 at Knox, 9 through 12 at junior senior at the high school. And then either UPK somewhere at Orange Street or high school. We have pros and cons. If you don't mind, I'll just give you a minute to look at those. If you have questions, we're going to answer any question you have. If I'm being honest, I hope I captured these pros and cons. This is a big shift for the ad hoc committee because prior to this time, we were saying this would be an elementary school. So plan B up here, the only change is that Knox would now be a middle school. It's the only difference. The shift is here now. Our current recommendations, I'm going to read out the slide. The district has listened, is still listening, reviewed past studies, past research already done. The district did a bunch of research. I don't know if you were with the board at the time of the first configurations, but I dug all that research up and I read it, and it was lackluster at best, but it was still something. And it was good for me to read through it. They talked about what grade levels, what grade configurations would be best for our school district. The ad hoc committee reviewed and discussed the pros and cons with 2 sub-options in Plan B. One was Plan B1 and one was Plan B2. And Plan B1 is where I'm falling squarely right now. And the cabinet has reached a consensus on B1. And B1 would make pre-K through 1 at Pleasant Avenue, 2 through 4 at Orange Street, 5 through 7 at Knox Middle School, 8 to 12 at senior high school. Plan B2, which according to some of the letters you read, is much preferred by some of those folks who were writing. And it's understandable because the people you heard from were indeed junior high teachers in the sense. Pleasant Avenue K2, this makes Pleasant Avenue full again without room for expansion, no room for UPK or special education that we need to drop. Orange Street, 3 through 5, this is basically one less grade level than we have currently, which is a good thing. Adding pre-K in adds 3 classrooms. We have some special education classrooms as well. Knox becomes a sort of true middle school, that 6th grade model. For Johnstown, 6th grade would be the new thing added to Knox. We would have to move all district offices, which we're going to do with any of that, and facilities as well. So then high school becomes 9 through 12 plus B2. It's 2 grade levels less than present, and a lot of open space there at high school.
So Plan B1 does have room for any special ed lessons as well?
Yeah, so if you look at B1, the difference between pre-K, K1, and K1 and 2 is that we only have 3 pre-K classrooms. And each of our other grade levels have between 5 and 6 grade level classrooms. And we also have an autistic class at that primary level, which we need to form. Right now, we're really struggling because, as I think I told you too, BOCES isn't able to staff a lot of the special ed programs that we need them to. We have some students still sitting at home, if you don't mind me saying, waiting for a placement, doing online instruction. It's a sad situation, not only for us, but for a lot of school districts. So we know that that need is coming up, maybe not next year, but the year following. And, you know, I know that our pre-kindergarten class right now, I'm going to go as far as to say that 19 out of 20 have been identified with a need for a service.
Of preschoolers that we evaluate?
Yes. Yeah. So we've evaluated 19 of them need services. That's a great thing, because otherwise we may have missed them. But because Nikki has come up with a school-based evaluation system, rather than waiting for the county, who's ultimately responsible for pre-K evaluations, we identify them. So we kind of know a little bit more about what we're getting. What's challenges are. So there are a lot of feelings around pre-K, K1, a lot of positive ones, I have to say. And then there are people who just throw pre-K to the wind. You know, like, doesn't matter what school they're in, they won't remember what they've learned, that sort of thing. So that's kind of where we are right now. And that's been presented to the ad hoc committee. And it is the buzz. If I can just stick with this, the next page you have some pros and cons. Under Plan B1, which again is pre-K1 at Pleasant, 2 through 4 Warren, 5 through 7 8 through 12 previously high. And it might be best if I just let you read through those. Now, how I got to write this slide was that we had pros and cons that kind of came up as a result of that hoc, but also at cabinet. I took this slide, put it together, I circulated it among all the cabinet members today, and I said, is there anything you see that doesn't look quite right? Do you think anything needs to be added? So this isn't just me sitting at my computer putting this down.
Can you talk a little bit about the last bullet on cons?
Sure. That, you know, I'm entitled to my opinion, right? Now, you know, as superintendent of the school district, this bullet's mine.
Okay.
It came out of something someone wrote in one of the letters you received. And it was that, you know, how are people going to perceive Johnstown School District if we do these wacky configurations? And it was implied. I don't know if it was said specifically, but it got me thinking, are there going to be concerns in the community that, our school is just a mess, and we just have whoever heard 5 through 7, and you know, that's what that means. I don't know if it's true, but I did wonder if people who were trying to recruit couldn't get their head around these configurations either. Because when you're looking for a job, you're also looking for a home, looking for a place you feel comfortable in and working, a place that you know you can be successful. It was just a thought of mine. So I hope that answers the question. But it's based on some implications that I kind of read through between the lines.
So can you talk a little bit more, you know, like I know I'm reading the pros and cons, but I think hearing you explain things might make it a little bit easier for me to grasp. I want to know, I guess, how you arrived to the consensus, and, you know, amongst the cabinet too, that B1 is the one.
Well, I will tell you that I was a fan of B2. Alicia, B1. I think cabinet, if we're being honest, some of us were B2, some of us were B1. We had some compelling information coming from different folks about what I told you about. Second and third graders, pre-K not just being put someplace, those kinds of conversations. But when we sit down and we think about how best to deliver instruction and consider all the social emotional pieces to the development of children, and space, giving that space to each of the buildings so that our programs can thrive and kids can feel comfortable in them. That's why we arrived at plan B1, I think, by consensus. It gives a nice, you're going to help me here, right? Pre-K to 1, it's a nice flow of helping. What am I looking for? Continuum of instruction and development, expertise at that level, and not throwing our pre-K kids to some other environment, but putting them in a concentrated environment that we can really develop. So that our pre-K students have a leg up when they come to kindergarten, which will must transition. So that's kind of that idea.
I guess I'll ask a question. So I guess
If you ask me more specific
Yeah.
it'll be easier.
So, you know, in the letters that we've read recently, it seems that the contention is about the middle school.
Yeah.
What is the middle school model? Is it 5 through 7? Is it 6 through 8? What about the 8th graders? Where do they fit in? You know, like, so I guess I want to hear more about that. You know, like, so the advantages of having the 8th graders in high school, why? The advantages of having, you know, 5 through 7 here, why?
I'm going to start and then I'm going to turn it over to someone up here. We have done a 7 to 12 model, and many schools have a 7 to 12 model. So I'm not worried about 7th graders being impressionable with 12th. I'm not worried about that, because even I have been now superintendent of school districts, 2 of them, with 7 to 12 programs. I'm not worried. In Cooperstown, my 7th graders walk the same hallways at the same time with my 12th graders. I don't think that's what we're after here. I think we're after a model where 8th grade is somewhat separated in terms of proximity, in terms of expectations and curriculum. I don't think in our minds we have our 8th graders walking the halls with those 9 to 12 students. 7th grade and 6th grade, 5th grade, to me, developmentally, are far beyond what they used to be in the old models that we know. 5 through 7, there's lots of opportunities there for kids to push down some of our, what I call essentials, into those grades, leaving a little bit more time to take care of some electives and explore a little bit more in high school, especially because we have kids going to P-Tech, kids going to GJSD, things like that. But I'm going on a tangent a little bit. These are some of the reasons that I feel it's not a huge stretch. I know a neighboring school district has a middle school model of 5 through 8. I know that. And my niece teaches there, so I pull her ear a lot. And that is not research, okay? I'm just acknowledging that. But I will say that it has been done. They're the highest performing school district in our region. And they've done a nice job with it because they've had time. It is one contiguous building. I will give them that. I talked to 2 superintendents who have 5 through 7 models, and they said it's wonderful. What I would change is maybe 8th grade. You know, I'd love to have that if we had room in our middle school. That's one complicated thing. So that's kind of where my information is coming. And I know that adolescents, really at age 10 to 14, depending on what research you're reading, sometimes 10 to 13, sometimes 11, over that. But I think the adolescent age group is there. You're always going to have an underclassman. You're always going to have an upperclassman.
Are you changing the model for 5th grade? Are they still liking their classrooms, or are you going to be more of a middle school model with them switching?
If you don't mind, let me have somebody else try to.
So right now,
Bob, you know, technically we need the principal.
5th grade right now is compartmentalized, so that would remain compartmentalized. And so their 5th grade is currently staying with their homerooms and going to like a science class, math class, things like that, they're in need of a bell schedule, right? Just for master scheduling purposes for AIS, essentials. Right now we have like band before school, chorus at after school, so it's really tough right now to kind of push everything in. Changing the model, no, because we're kind of already setting the tone for these kids. It almost works out well because 5th grade is kind of like the start where, you know, they're departmentalized. 6th grade, they still have a homeroom, they still go to lunches with their homerooms, they go to essentials to their homerooms, but they have individual schedules. And then 7th grade, it's almost like a progression as you're going up. So it just kind of, it fits and everyone's on the bell schedule and things just kind of align a little bit better for us, master schedule-wise.
So they're already learning primarily the way that they were learning here. The only difference is one grade level would have one floor, another grade level another floor.
I will acknowledge, I've read the correspondence we received, and, you know, I struggle a little bit with some of the comments because I think they're leaning heavily into the emotional investment of how things have always been. You know, our district is steeped in tradition, and that oftentimes means we get ossified in these patterns of behavior and beliefs that it can only be this way. It can only be successful if I experienced it in that manner. And what I do find compelling about this Plan B1 is that I do think it is shifting our district mindset to be one of creativity and innovation in how we deliver the academic experience to our kids. Because I think there has to be an acknowledgement that kids are growing up faster than we ever did, certainly I ever did. And that is evidenced by some of the discipline issues you've spoken to me about at the 5th grade level, at the 8th grade level. I think by and large, as much as Knox operated as a very smooth machine under several different principles, Bob, you were one of them, I think, you know, the culture that was created, I do not see that as being somehow mutually exclusive to only a 7-8 model. I think there needs to be an awareness that we can create cultures with different grade groupings that are just as successful given the dedication and creativity of our teaching faculty to make that happen. I'm reading a lot of that as indigestion from folks who are greatly impacted by this and their emotional investment in how things have always been. That's not to diminish, I think, their experience or what it is they're feeling is right, but I'm seeing a broader good with the Plan B1 than I am with the B2, based on this presentation and based on my own observations.
I think what we get excited about is the idea of doing something a little differently because we're changing. Our demographics are changing. We can acknowledge a lot of things if we open our eyes. We have been a school of need improvement. Academically, what we've been doing for decades hasn't been working. And for several different reasons. It's not about configurations. But if we can get excited about configurations, get excited about instruction. The biggest piece, I think, is when we met with all the social emotional staff today, and we talked through and I wanted to elicit their concerns and thoughts. And they said this is going to come at a price of staffing, but we would advocate for that anyhow, no matter what configuration you had. But Johnstown is a different place now than it was when any of us went to school. We have more poverty. We have 3 to 5 kindergartners every day in crisis. Sometimes mobile crisis may fall 3 times. We need the social and emotional supports now more than ever. And it's the only way any configuration is going to work in the future. It's my belief. But when we talk about social emotional learning, rightly so, the people we've heard from, That is their only concern. Developmentally, how is this going to impact kids? Socially, emotionally? No one really raised an academic issue. People did raise an athletic issue, for sure, and I get that. But I think we might have an answer for athletic, at least in our heads.
Yeah, but you know what, if I may interrupt on that point alone, I came up through, I had practices, when I was in Knox, there were times I practiced at the high school. When I was at the high school, I had to come to Knox to practice. I had to go to the field to practice, or I might have to go to Warren Street or to Glebe Street to practice. I don't find that to be a compelling argument on any level. And I think once these kids and faculty find themselves in an environment that is dedicated to their particular cohort, I think that culture will develop of its own accord. I think what we have to stop doing is bouncing everybody around. You know, we've been going through this over the last 15 years, the grade level grouping, and then, you know, downshifting to, you know, make our footprint so much smaller. Well, we did that, and we've now realized the error of that way because it's compressed everybody to a point where they can't function. So we have to occupy the buildings and space we have. I think we have to get over the notion that our children are somehow incapable of handling, you know, some of these transitions. I think they're way more resilient than we give them credit for. And I think our teachers are way more resilient than they're giving themselves credit for. And I would like to see us start to take a path of a little bit more risk and innovation in terms of how we give this whole education thing a try.
Well, this is a model that would be supported by state ed, first of all, and that's really important to know. Our buildings would have ample space. Developmentally, I think our students will be fine, just fine. Athletics is, I understand this concern in not having a traditional 7th grader rub elbows with the traditional 8th grader in our heads, anyway, is definitely a thought to have. But I'm not sure it's a reality. Because if we suspend any more 5th graders for having vaping pens, or any more 8th graders, you know, expelling them for the things that they're doing, they're not, I don't know if they're being influenced by older kids. I think they're being influenced by society. So I think we need to turn our attention a little bit more to the social emotional supports we can offer them in school and worry a little bit less, in my opinion, I've been doing this for 33 years, about the influence I think some people might have. But some kids might have on those. But our teachers are powerful people here. It is honestly the thing that's got this district going. Our staff is a treasure. And I would love to have them all on board.
That's a really critical piece.
Very
because if you have half of your staff that are dissenting in the model that you want to go to, it could create some of these huge waves.
sure. Have. But I don't think that's what we have. Because we have some people pretty excited about the model.
I guess my wondering was about music, you know, because we have some music teachers, you know, at Warren now, but this does sort of split up the junior high sort of configuration for chorus.
In our paradigm of 17.
Right. So that would certainly, and I guess I'm concerned about staffing too. You know, does this mean we need to? Is this going to be like shared staff, or is it, you know?
Somebody want to talk about that. Well, they were the first people I went to, selfishly, in the music department. How do you feel about this? And they had developed a couple plans already, but I don't know if anybody knows.
Yeah, they did develop a couple different options for whichever way we end up going. And so ultimately it will come down to them deciding how they want to spread themselves out, but minimal shares can be done.
But they strongly prefer this 6th grade, I will say that, in the 9th to 12. I won't share it with that. But they also said we can work with this 5 through 7 and think differently.
They're willing to work with them.
They're willing.
I mean, I just think that it's important, you know, for everybody. And I hope that they recognize it too, that there's a lot of space in the high school, and moving aid out again leaves a lot of space. You know, so you know, we need to, yeah. I mean, just thinking about when we went when we went through the system, the building was much smaller, and we had 150 more students there, you know, in high school. So we know.
But we also didn't have those pullouts and those special education. Our mission gets harder and harder to see through. You know, so you're practicing educators. We have a lot more special needs classrooms than we ever did. And they're not stuck away in the basement anymore either. That's pretty fun. So there's a lot to discuss here, and I will say that the cabinet has this. I had to make 2 phone calls this week. It wasn't good news to some people on the cabinet because this is the way I was leaning now, and so we're not all on the same page. Exactly, we're not. But at the end of the day, I think we can get there. Hopefully, I think next week is our last meeting to bring this configuration. So I definitely sympathize with the educators in the room who have specific thoughts and desires. But I also applaud those people who are willing to work with a different plan. We've got to do something different, Johnson. We have an opportunity here, and I think it could be pretty exciting. So, there's more work to do, trust me. I mean, this is just the beginning in a lot of ways. But meeting with our SEAL staff today, I call them social emotional academic learning staff. They had very strong feelings about how we should go, the direction we should go to support kids in any model. Doesn't matter. Family consumer science teacher came up to Mr. Hale today, had some great suggestions, right, for how to deliver family consumer science in this B1 model. So that, I appreciate that. Very creative. B2 goes into pros and cons. Looks like we didn't do this as much thought. But the only pros and cons that I could come up with myself in B2 was that we wouldn't have to shift our mindset. We wouldn't have to think differently. It would generally be understood better by people, but it wouldn't necessarily give us the room we need to develop. We have a timeline to follow, so on January 5th, I should cross it out, we met with the nurses. Now the nurses were very compelling. When we were talking about having pre-K in Pleasant with K and 1, is this going to be too much to handle and kids can't use the bathroom? I said, no, we want them in that model. And so you got to listen to the nurses because they're going to be the ones. But they also said we're going to need some additional nursing help. So stay tuned. And they had very good reasons to say. The 19th, we had a seal focus group meeting today. Tonight's board meeting, we'll have our 4th ad hoc meeting on the 23rd, and then hopefully a recommendation will come out of that. February 16th is when we have our meeting to kind of decide. And that's kind of where I am right now. And I'd be happy to answer questions on your own time.
I'm just really glad to see that we have so many other focus meetings, because all these groups really are important, and they might not have had a seat at the table at that time.
Well, selfishly, we're just fishing for ideas too, because it's a lot to tell someone to do without actually consulting.
I think it just says a lot about the district with regard to collaboration.
Trying. Some unhappy people at the moment.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Crenshaw. I'm going to read this, but I know it's probably not. Okay, comments from the public on agenda and non-agenda items. The Board of Education welcomes district residents, parents, students, and other people to our meeting. Community involvement in board meetings is encouraged so that we can better understand your views. Please be aware that individual student information and particular personnel issues will not be discussed by this board during public session. When recognized by the board president, please state your name and address. Statements are restricted to a maximum of 3 minutes, and speakers will be notified by the board president when their time has expired. When speaking, the public shall direct their comments to the board and not the district staff or other audience members. Speakers shall not expect board members to answer questions during public comment. Questions shall be referred to the superintendent or his or her designee for review, study, and response. If appropriate, the board may request the interview be a discussion item at a future Board of Education meeting or Board of Education committee meeting. Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to address the board? See, I told you. Okay, so before we move on to reports, I kind of want to move up there. At the end, we had indicated a possible executive session. What I'd like to do is have a closed session due to seeking legal advice from our attorney. I'd like to go into that session before we go to reports, if that's okay. Okay. Can I get a motion? All right. Second? Yeah? All those in favor? Thank you very much. We'll adjourn and be back. Okay, so we've got a few reports to get into. So we'll start with the superintendent's report.
Try to be brief. Shared decision-making team. We've been talking a little bit. We met the district team, and we reviewed all the minutes from the ad hoc, answered some questions. Transportation ad hoc. We are discussing options for next year and the year following. Year one, we're talking about maybe single routes, so a single pickup rather than 2 tiers of pickup. We're talking about citywide bus stops for students, and we're talking about the addition of a transportation director. Because the following year, this is at least where we are in the conversation. It seems like a good idea to the ad hoc committee at this point to go with a private bus partner like STA Grounds and hybrid, sort of have a few of our own bus drivers for nimble flexibility. There are personnel concerns, like how we get those bus drivers, which I can go into later. But transportation is progressing nicely. Knox opening you heard about. Athletics had a productive meeting tonight. Facilitator Mark Fish is leading with the essential questions and certain options that Brian is kind of echoing there for. Like we can do nothing. We can discontinue certain athletics. How do you make that choice? Good idea to change what you're doing with offerings is whether you don't have the money to do it or you don't have the student enrollment to do it. That's not really either of our problems. So that's really why you should probably cut a sport. Other than that, how do you apply the value judgment? Third, do we apply for league memberships again to the WAC, to Foothills for associate membership? Or do we go independent for a year with every team and then hope the section, seats us in a good league that we can work with? So productive meeting tonight. Next meeting will be next week already. We'll present data. I am advocating with superintendents. I spoke with one lead superintendent over the weekend. Just trying to make those relationships happen. I know Scott's working with the principals and Brian's working with the athletic directors behind the scenes. And a little complication, there is a new Section 2 director coming in. The one that's in now, Ed Dopp, is pretty helpful. So I hope the next person is too. Talking about SRO, I kind of broke that conversation in this past week with a couple of our committees, and I'll have something pretty well formed for you in February about SROs. The approval of the Knox building opening obviously needs to come in February. We have started our wellness committee again, thanks to Alicia and Brian Van Ostrand. Word about before and after school enrichment for 22-23 and 23-24. We're working on an MOU with the JTA for compensation for this enrichment, which should bring some really exciting opportunities to kids with money we have from school improvement. No, ARP. There's so many grants out there. When they all go away, we're going to feel really lonely. But we have to spend this money. We have to spend 1% of these grants in the next 2 years. So you heard tonight's presentation of the capital component, so I won't get into that. We are, again, the SRO, I told you a little bit about that. Chief Gilbo can also come if that's the board's pleasure next week. I think that's all for now, and then the rest I can cover in other meetings.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have the employee leadership reports by Nancy Lisicki.
Good evening. It's interesting that we started with the budget presentation because it is the taxpayers of Johnstown investing in the children and the future of Johnstown. And so tonight I just wanted to talk a little bit about how the Johnstown, there's only 4 slides. Oh, if you wouldn't mind. About how the Johnstown Teachers Association is investing in Johnstown's teachers, or students, sorry. So, as a classroom teacher for over 20 years, each spring, some of you are familiar with this, I would submit my supply order to the district, purchasing pencils and composition books and pocket chairs and nameplates and a myriad of other classroom supplies. However, not everything that I needed or wanted for my classroom was available through the supply catalog from which I compiled my order, nor did I always know exactly what my class next year might need or benefit from or enjoy until I met them in the fall or until I began working with them. So that's where the JTA mini grant program often saved the day, not just for me, but for numerous members of the instructional staff. So each year, the Johnstown Teachers Association designates funds in our budget to fulfill the requests of our members for additional materials that will support their instruction and support our students. This year, JTA has provided grants to 7 members who have submitted applications describing the initiatives or the supplies that fell beyond the parameters of the traditional classroom supply budget set by the district. So I'll tell you tonight about 4 of those. So first, we have Mrs. Cromer and Mrs. Blanchard. They purchased PE equipment for their pre-kindergarten students. And here's what they say. Universal pre-K students are enjoying exploring with the smaller size bouncy balls that were purchased with the mini grant funds. At times, there can be 36 children in the gym at once, and the mini grant has allowed students to have their own ball during class to practice bouncing, tossing, catching, and throwing. The additional funds were also used to purchase 2 floor targets that students will be able to use to practice underhand tossing when they participate in stations throughout the year. You can go to the next slide. And it's isn't it funny to think that these kids in, I don't know, a few years are going to be our basketball team. But this is where they get that foundation for those skills. So, all right, the next slide, we're going to learn about Mrs. Cotucci. She purchased monthly periodicals for her students at the junior senior high school. So Mrs. Cotucci was able to use the JTA mini grant funds to purchase Scholastic Upfront magazine. This amazing resource has provided Ms. Cotucci's AIS students with new reading material every month. In addition to the 13 printed copies of the magazine, there are additional online materials for both Mrs. Cotucci and her students, and she thanks JTA for funding this supplemental resource. In the next slide, we move to Warren Street. Mrs. Rao also purchased some reading materials for her students with the JTA mini grant funds. This is what she says. In 6th grade, each trimester, students complete one-pagers, which are book reports based on different genres. One of the genres, myths, is assigned to correlate during our Amplify ELA curriculum unit entitled The Greeks. This mini grant proposal included purchasing 2 copies of each of the 10 books in the series Mythomania, which includes 10 fractured myth stories. Each book is based on a different Greek god or goddess. The addition of these books in Mrs. Rao's mythology section of her classroom library will be beneficial to her students, being able to read and learn more about Greek mythology. And she too thanks the JTA for allowing her to bring this opportunity to her students. And last, finally this evening, we're going to learn how Mrs. Papa and Mrs. Krempa utilize their mini grant funds at the junior senior high pool. Here's what they tell us. Swimming is a life skill that every person should have. We live in an area with multiple lakes, streams, and ponds, and unfortunately, at least once a year, we hear of a drowning in our immediate area. We're fortunate enough to have a pool at our junior senior high school building, which allows us to provide swim instruction during PE class. The ability to participate in those lessons is vital. Providing students in need with a bathing suit and a towel to borrow is the least we can do. With that in mind, we applied for and used our JTA mini grant to fund the purchase of bathing suits and towels for the pool located at the Johnstown Junior Senior High School. Over the course of the past few years, it's become increasingly apparent that there are multiple students and families who cannot afford swimsuits and/or towels. We started to notice this trend pre-COVID and did what we could do to accommodate these students by asking for donations of old bathing suits from teachers in the building or from what we had at home. Since reopening the pool in the spring of 2022, we've noticed that the need has increased tenfold. These students want to participate in the lessons we offered, but some days we just don't have enough suits to go around. So thanks to the mini grant, we were able to purchase 9 new bathing suits and 6 towels. The bathing suits and towels are lent out during class based on need, and the suits and towels are collected at the end of each period and washed each night so that they're ready to go for the next student day. For any student in need. So thank you for allowing me to share this information. It not only demonstrates JTA's commitment to reinvesting in our students, but also shows some of the innovative thinking and instruction that's occurring each day in our school district. and I look forward to sharing 3 more at next month's meeting. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. I only have a very minor board report, and that is I received a request to provide a board, a request for the board to provide a gift basket for auction for the
Founders Day?
Founders Day, yes, thank you. So I would like to ask if everybody could maybe provide me with $20. Is that too much, too little, personally? Any donation you'd like. We as a board are gonna provide a gift basket for that event. Get me whatever you feel comfortable with, and I will make sure that that basket is put together and submitted. What's that? We can make that happen. Okay, so next up, we have several committee reports. I'll provide those reports quickly. First one is the Facilities Committee. So we met this week with our architects and the EPC company, Danforth, as well as Turner Construction, to give us an update on the status of the capital project. With the EPC, we reviewed the current status of the project and scope and exclusions. The project is in design development phase. We are targeting an SED submission in July. We're also targeting a construction start in the summer of 2024. With the medium capital project, we are coordinating the scope with the EPC scope. We're currently evaluating cost against budget and developing potential alternates list. The next step is to embark on schematic design. The planned SED submission is in October of the completed construction documents. They want to target January as the bid period so that they can be ready for a summer 2024 construction start. In terms of new business, brief review of the small capital project bid award. There was a single bid received for the small capital project. Costs came in higher than expected due to some scope adjustments related to the track width paving. And the ornamental fence is excluded from the current bid. The superintendent, based on recommendations from the architect, has recommended acceptance of the submitted bid. Track coating and perimeter fencing and several adjoining pavement preparations are also included in that work. The original wrought iron fencing around Knox Field, due to small project bid results, the ornamental fencing is currently excluded. Dave Wood made a report documenting the condition of the fence and suggested repairs. Fence work will need to be split between small project and medium project in order to accomplish it. And we are working with the architect to do deeper research on the best way to rehab or replace the fence. It's a complicated process. More complicated than most people realize. Next up, we have the Personnel Committee. We reviewed leadership structure. So an administrative position for the 2023-24 school year was discussed, and we collect together the work of CSE, CPSE, assistant UPK administrator, and assist with other projects and support building principals during the transitions. Plan when opening the Knox building. The district will need to post for principal under the new configuration in 2023-24. And upcoming tenure appointments were also discussed. Negotiations and minimum wage. The New York State minimum wage was increased by $1 to $14.20 per hour as of December 31st, 2022. Historically, the increase has been 70 cents per hour until the wage is at $15 per hour. Most district staff are above the $14.20 per hour, with the exception of the newly hired teaching assistants, whose starting rate is $14.16 per hour. A handful of these employees were increased the minimum wage as of December 31st. The CSEA agreement, the district planned for raises in hourly salaries at 70 cents per hour. The state raised them at $1 per hour. In Obviously, we have some disconnect on some of our budgeting. We have negotiations coming up with the JAA, the JPA, and the COA to negotiate new agreements to be in place for July 1st. So we have a recommended negotiation team for the JAA with Will Stock and Marge Klein. We have a JTA negotiation team with myself and Joelle Richardson. We have a COA negotiation that will be led by Dr. Crankshaw, who will create a master agreement for this non-aligned group, and it will be presented to the membership and to the President and Vice President for review. The committee heard Dr. Crankshaw's recommendations for percentage increases for each contractual group. The ARP and CRRSA staffing update. The ARP grant funding is broken down into 3 components. We have the ARP regular, ARP learning loss, and ARP summer, and ARP after school. These monies are authorized for the 2021-22 school year through 2023-24. The grant ends at the conclusion of the 23-24 school year. The ARP regular will use the remaining allocation of $1.4 million to continue to fund our students, teachers, teaching assistants, teacher aides, letters training, alternate transportation services for the final year, along with following identified new staffing, which would include health and AIS teacher at half each, music teacher, social worker, psychologist, nurse, head custodian, nurse, school resource officer, and principal for 1 elementary school. The ARP learning loss will use the remaining allocation of $348,000 to fund 3 AIS teachers and our community outreach specialists. The ARP summer will use the remaining allocation of $61,000 to provide a more robust summer program for students in K through 8. The ARP after school will use the remaining allocation of approximately $50,000 to support tutoring and Regents preparation. The CRRSA grant funding of $1.3 million ends at the conclusion of this year. The CRRSA grant funded 4 AIS teaching positions and 1 instructional coach position for 2 years. This grant also funded 1 behavioral specialist through ICANN. Personnel vacancies, successes, challenges. We have budget development focused on the Knox reopening and grade configuration planning. Transportation planning for 2023, 24, and 24-25. That includes for next year, the district will hire a transportation director to assist the revamping bus routes, communication with families, and help prepare for 24-25. The work of the Transportation Ad Hoc Committee is showing that most, if not all, members are in favor of utilizing a transportation company. Dr. Crankshaw reported on this earlier. We also have an Albany recruitment fair coming up on April 19th. The school resource officer was discussed. The district has been in conversation with the Johnstown Police Department regarding the addition of school resource officers in our schools, especially at the grade 5 through 12 level. Chief Gilbo has stated that the salary for officers is approximately $60,000, and the city would pick up the cost of the benefits. We have 1 officer currently on staff with JPD that would be a good fit for us and would need to hire a new officer should we decide to have 2 SROs. The cost is determined by the work schedule of the officers. District-wide safety team discussed adding SROs for schools and was met with favorable responses. They focused on the relationships an SRO can build with students and their families. Cost of SROs would be paid through ARP for next year and then incorporated into the general fund budget beginning in 24-25. And we have discovered that many school districts are adding these SROs to their staffs. Next meeting will be Tuesday, April 18th at 5:30. And last but not least, it would be the Audit Budget and Finance Committee meeting. We reviewed the capital component of the 23-24 budget, which was reviewed earlier this evening. We also discussed the school resource officer, which was reported in the prior report. We also discussed the need for establishing a district credit card, which is a common practice in most school districts, and would ease certain types of purchasing and reimbursement protocols, and would reduce the work in the business office related to that activity. Reserve plan investment strategies. We're researching other banking options to determine if we can earn higher interest rates on financial assets. We'll be recommending the addition of 2 new banking institutions to secure better interest earnings for reserve accounts. Capital project AIA agreements were also discussed. We've gone through attorney review. The district rejected certain limits of liability clauses and additional services payment clauses. Tetra Tech has accepted the district stipulations, and we were waiting for, and we do have now final copies, and then brief discussion on the upcoming negotiations with substitutes, JAA and JTA. Next committee meeting will be February 7th at 6:30. Okay, any questions about any of those reports? Okay. So, moving on, any correspondence we need to discuss? Yeah, nothing other than what was already mentioned earlier. Okay, we have a consent agenda. In an effort to expedite the business of the Board of Education, but in no way meant to diminish the importance of each item, a consent agenda may be used for the items in this section. Items may be removed from the consent agenda at the request of any one board member. Items not removed will be adopted by general consent without debate. Any removed items may be taken up either immediately after the consent agenda or placed later on the agenda at the discretion of the board. So this covers items 1A through A7, and, sorry?
It should be actually A1 through 8.
Oh, I'm sorry, A1 through 8? Got it, yep. Okay. So, correct that, that's A1 through A8, and letters B and C. Can I get a motion to accept the consent agenda? First? Second? March? Any questions? All those in favor? Unanimous vote. Thank you. We have a few business items to get through.
Can we
Well, when we get to the personnel items, yes, we're going to see about consolidating them. There's a couple of things, well, maybe I should ask. Are there any items in here that anybody wants to discuss independently that, or would we be comfortable with the consent agenda on?
Did you want to see what the person use it with this?
Oh, yeah, good point. I thought that was included in the consent action.
Was it personnel included?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So yeah, we're back to action items. So I think, you're asking if we can consolidate
Yes.
this?
I mean, I don't want to listen to you read all of those policies.
I thought I had a pretty good voice. I would have thought you made the motion, but, okay, so, all those in favor of condensing this into a consent agenda? Okay, so, with that in mind, so this would be, under action items business, which is Roman numeral 8, items 1 through 5, Roman numeral 9, items 1 through 5, and Roman numeral, yeah. Oh yeah, we do have a few retirements. We'll pull the retirements out. There's 1, 2, 3, just 3 retirements. So we'll pull those out. Okay, so can I have a second motion to accept the consent agenda as was stated? Art? None? All those in favor? Thank you. All right, we have a few personnel items. We have first the retirement of Betsy Kovacek. Thank you. And I'd like to have a motion to accept the retirement. Second? March, thank you. Okay, any questions? All those in favor? Thank you. We also have the retirement of Glenn Dubross, custodian. Do I have a motion to accept his retirement? All right. Any questions? comments?
He's already retired, right?
February 24th, I think is his last day. Although I think he might be employed, I'm not sure.
He was here yesterday.
Oh, was he really? Okay, I'm just looking at Facebook.
Okay, all those in favor? Thank you. We also have the retirement of Tamara Healy, music teacher. Can I have a motion to accept her retirement? Ron? March, second? Okay, any questions or comments?
Could I just say, I really wish them all well and lots of good health and continued, health. They've all served the district for a very long time. 20, 30, 40 years.
Thank you. So I'll call the vote. All those in favor, or did I get a motion? I did, okay, sorry, those in favor? Thank you, okay. All right, so the rest of those items were covered under our consent agenda. We have a few board discussion items. We have the continuation of policy manual audit section 5000. Does anybody have any questions or comments or thoughts about any of that reading that they hopefully are doing? No? Okay. We have the review of policy 7220, which is the graduation option, early graduation and accelerated programs. Any questions on that at this time? I wouldn't mind hearing a little bit from your perspective on that.
So 7221 is the policy you need to take a look at. There's some language in there. It's the policy is participation in graduation ceremonies and activities. I think I forgot how we discovered it, but we discovered that the last line, for purposes of this policy, is students' high school graduating class is the 12th grade class with which he or she entered into the 9th grade. That's very limiting language when we also accept 11th graders who are graduating well. It technically prevents them from graduating, with the kids. So I would just recommending that we take that line out so we can allow our juniors to walk. And, not that we wouldn't anyway, but just the policy.
So on the heels of that, there has been some discussion about the merits of that advanced graduation process and the right to earn certain accolades at graduation. Has there been any discussion about formulating, maybe there is a policy with that?
So 7220, the policy that comes along with this, there are no changes to this. I just wanted to make the board aware that we have a policy that governs the early graduation, accelerated programs option, the graduation options that kids have. It doesn't really go into much detail at all. Much of the time we're left, once we have circumstances that come up, we kind of rely on our relationships, and I think Mr. Hale has a pretty good process in place because we do currently have 4 students, 2 who would be eligible for valedictorian, 2 for salutatorian. And the funny thing is, I think one of each are juniors and one of each are seniors. And the one of each of juniors, I think, override the averages of the upperclassmen. So we probably will have co-valedictorians and co-salutatorians. I think that's what, is that pretty accurate? Or is that not supposed to say that?
The TPAs are accurate. The decision on this stuff.
I shouldn't have. But we have to grapple with that decision when it comes up. It's not dictated in policy.
In the language too, it's also a 5-year student too, that kind of includes the student who might graduate, which we celebrate students who graduate. Sure. We want them to participate in graduation ceremony. That sentence for that policy, as far as relevant students, there's nothing concrete that states within a cohort.
Should we create a policy for that, or is it better a procedural item?
I think that would come in the extracurricular academic committee. I think that would be part of that conversation.
I think that's something we need to look at, because I've been getting a bunch of inquiries about that recently because of our current circumstances, but it's also something I've heard of in prior years. Correct. And I know that's something that has meaning to many families who have a child who's excelling, no matter what grade they're in. So
we plan to take it to the academic
Okay, I think that's a wise choice. Okay, any other further questions about that? Okay. So we have a few informational, we need to choose a date for the board workshop. Is there a date that you have in mind, Dr. Cranshaw, that?
Actually, no. But by board workshop, I think I mean just in-depth financial, maybe February or March, probably March. Okay, I think March is too late. March is probably a good time. Why don't we just see it post? I think we could get by with a couple hours, but we really need to go in depth. I really want the board to understand.
Are we going to target an evening, a weekday evening, or a Saturday? Sunday?
That's the board's pleasure. I love Saturdays and I'm making quiche, but that's
Does the board have a preference either way?
Anytime's okay with me.
Session?
Weekend, or weekdays. I prefer weekdays.
You prefer weekdays? Do that.
Let's plan on a weekday evening.
This time I said, ooh, this is going to be a rough week if we try to squeeze it in on the 18th. So
Yeah, if it's just later in March after Odyssey,
later in March.
if it's a weekend. Weekends are a little bit better.
It'll be a weekday, it sounds like.
Okay, we've got a couple of board seats that'll be up for election this year. Lorena, when do petitions become available?
Somewhere around March 1st, there'll be notice on the website.
Okay. So it's,
There's actually anything in the law that includes, you can start collecting signatures when you want, but generally we announce them.
okay, so it's my seat, Joelle's seat, and Beth's seat that are up for election. Well, two of those.
Two, right, there's three terms ending, but only two will be.
Right, because of the shift in our demographic. Okay, we have a few informational items. February 7th will be the Academic and Extracurricular Committee at 5:30 p.m. February 7th will also be the Audit Budget and Finance Committee at 6:30 p.m. here at Knox. February 16th will be the next business meeting and budget discussion starting at 6 p.m. here at Knox. Anybody have any other business to bring to the board this evening?
It was about a month ago, we had some snow, and I was driving on Perry Street right out here. I was going that way, and I almost got in an accident because I took a double take, and there was our superintendent shoveling the sidewalk.
It was only because I didn't want to walk through the snow. It was totally selfish. And I wanted to cross from the corner. There's no reflection on our ground.
So it's quite a sight. I was going to stop.
Sure it was. But I didn't want to walk through the snow.
Okay,
So there's no sidewalk there.
I will entertain a motion for adjournment. Art, second? Ron, all in favor? Thank you, everyone.